I've been going back and forth on whether or not I wanted to make this video. This so-called comedy special affected me quite strongly. I both laughed and cried, which, crying is not normally a part of comedy specials. The only other artist I can think of to do this for me was Hannah Gadsby with her show Nanette, which was also remarked upon at the time for being an odd show to call a comedy special. Inside is Bo Burnham's return to performing after a 5-year hiatus. It both feels like a return to form and an evolution of his skills as an artist. Bo Burnham started as a YouTube star in 2006 and has gained a pretty decent sized following, with over 2 million subscribers as of June 2021. When this special launched, I immediately noticed everyone around me was talking about it. I've even seen friends getting tattoos based on this special. And that makes perfect sense, because Bo has never been just your run-of-the-mill stand-up comedian. The basis of the show is that it was filmed over the course of a year during the pandemic while we were all stuck inside. Because it was filmed this way over many months, it has several advantages that normal comedy performances do not, and Bo Burnham does not waste these advantages. Due to the nature of Bo Burnham's work, this video will be touching upon the issues of mental illness, suicide prevention, and the Black Lives Matter protests of 2020. Bo's attention to detail is immaculate, down to setting the thermostat to 69 during the song Sexting. A lot of his artistic skill is seen in his cinematography, his use of lighting, his understanding of where to place the camera to elicit certain emotions. In both FaceTime with My Mom and White Woman's Instagram, the shot is cropped to reflect the dimensions of the app he's singing about. One trick that he does repeatedly is the slow zoom. Several of the songs start with a wide shot and zoom in at an incredibly slow pace. It helps to pull you in to capture your attention. Reversely, there are multiple shots zooming out. This seems to happen during subject matter that we as a society like to shy away from or to dissociate from. Jeffrey Bezos. Despite shots like these that show complete disarray, you know that they were intentionally placed. But that doesn't take away from the effect the state of the room has on our understanding of his mental health at the moment. I like that the room goes from empty and neat to chaotic and messy, and then gets cleaned again at the end of the special. The state of the room served as a sort of meter for me. Knowing that this was shot during the same year that we all struggled through, this really helped cement me into the progression of the story. Bo Burnham's style of comedy is discrete bits without the smooth transitions that some comedians try to put in. In shooting inside, Burnham uses this to his advantage often. If he doesn't have an ending to a song, he'll just cut right in the middle of it. It's a great way to keep the pace of the show moving, but it also serves to keep the audience on their toes, so to speak. You don't have a chance to get comfortable and complacent, because before you do, he cuts to the next thing. There are also numerous shots that hold on for an extra few seconds, showing Bo either editing or fixing his camera position. Most people would have edited those portions out, but Burnham doesn't. It serves to make this feel less like a scripted show and more like a video diary of sorts. Seeing him do things like almost tipping his camera onto the ground made it feel less like he was a distant figure on a stage, instead making him appear more earnest and relatable. Juxtaposition has always been a cornerstone of Bo Burnham. It lends to his ability to stuff a lot of socio-political commentary into his work while still making you laugh. I think the best example of this comes in the song How the World Works. The bright orange and cheery tone initially made me relax. The words of the first verse are familiar. Being a white person who grew up in the Midwest United States, these were the sort of things I was taught as a kid. The harmony of the world all working together, the great circle of life. In comes Sacco. Immediately he cements the childishness of these lessons, mocking the idea that when we were initially taught the harmony ecosystem idea, we were also young enough to still be regularly watching shows with puppets. And then Sacco starts talking, a really quick, really harsh view of the world. The juxtaposition between these two ways to look at the world is unsettling. Bo then starts singing with Sacco, symbolizing how governments and people with power will pretend to go along with social justice, if only in name. Sure enough, the second Sacco starts standing up to him, this happens.
We are entrenched in a... Wait, no, please, I don't want to go back. I can't go back. Please. I'm sorry.
Are you going to behave yourself?
Yes.
Yes. What?
Yes, sir.
Look at me.
Yes, sir.
That's better.
It not only highlights the stark reality of social justice movements and how they are treated by those in power, but it also shows that this conflict can and does exist in individuals. I love how this song works, showing very concisely something that many of us experience, especially millennials and Gen Z. The jarring realization we face when we learn that the American dream, the idyllic, harmonious world, is just that, a dream. I was perfectly happy with the naive first verse, laughed sardonically at the second verse, and then became deeply uncomfortable as I was forced to acknowledge the contradictions of the two. The song Problematic gets its own section. This was the song I was most desperate to see from Bo, because this is an issue I've had with his work in the past. Specifically, a lot of gay jokes, including his liberal use of a gay slur. It's been said that the reason he used that word was that he was called that a lot growing up, and so he felt he had a right to reclaim it. No, that's not okay. Reclaiming a slur is something that happens. Many black people have reclaimed the N-word. The LGBTQ+ community has a Q now because they've reclaimed the word queer. But Bo is a
straight white man,
so it's wrong for him to use these jokes. The song Problematic is him finally admitting he was wrong. One part of the song in particular stood out to me.
and I've been totally awful. My closet is chock full of stuff that is vaguely shitty. All of it was perfectly lawful, just not very thoughtful at all, and just really shitty.
This encapsulates that it wasn't a legal issue, it was a moral one. It shows a much needed level of growth and self-actualization. And this is seen not just within the song Problematic.
And I think that, if I'm self-aware about being a douchebag, it'll somehow make me less of a douchebag, but it doesn't. Self-awareness does not absolve anybody of anything.
For many people, religion plays a vital role in their moral compass. So it makes sense that in a song of moral self-actualization, this is included. The only shot that bugs me is this one. Jesus is portrayed as an innocent by Christianity. To me, this shot can be read in a way that conflicts with the song itself. The song is about him taking accountability for his past actions, but he then pairs it with arguably the most famous martyr in the world. It leads me to question how sincere Burnham actually is with this apology of sorts. There are many great transitional scenes, but I'm gonna just focus on the one where Bo is a brand consultant. It stems from the huge push in recent years towards brand accountability. This idea came of age with millennials. For several years, the news media was filled with "millennials are killing XYZ, Applebee's or whatever." I used to joke about these headlines until I realized they weren't joking. They were actually accusing us of purposely and maliciously killing entire industries. More recently, the media has finally started to see what most of us were doing since the beginning. Millennials as a generation have more debt, often college debt. Balance that with a lack of well-paying jobs, and you end up with a lot of people living paycheck to paycheck. Now add in that despite all the protests and petitions, the changes Americans overwhelmingly want are being blocked or filibustered. Governmental change is glacial, and it's been increasingly clear that the power of corporations and lobbying firms hold the actual sway in Congress. Since putting the pressure directly on the government isn't very effective most of the time, we switch tactics. The corporations influence Congress, so we go after the corporations. We start holding them accountable. Since it's been established that millennials have the collective power to truly affect a company's bottom line, companies have had little choice but to start listening. For years, companies were only giving lip service to the idea.
All these big companies, they're so scared of all this social change, and I come in and I put their fears to rest. I tell them, just be honest. Tell your customers that JP Morgan is against racism, in theory.
And a lot of this is just companies going with the tide. You see a lot of brands picking vague stances on causes that very few people would actually be against.
The question is no longer, do you want to buy wheat thins, for example? The question is now, will you support wheat thins in the fight against Lyme disease?
There's a lot of things like, for every item we sell, we will donate money to fund children's cancer treatment. Yeah, I don't know anyone who would be against that. So these are often just ploys to increase brand awareness. Although that has been changing. Take a look at the 2020 Black Lives Matter protests. What was interesting to me was that shortly after the initial protests, you automatically start seeing these companies jumping into the conversation. But there were two sides to that debate. Usually the BLM crowd on one side, the cops on the other. Both sides felt extremely concrete in their beliefs, in their steadfast conclusion that the other side was wrong. So, a lot of companies chose a side. You saw some companies giving free meals or extra discounts to police, and you saw stores with BLM posters in the window. Because these two sides were so diametrically opposed, companies that wanted to enter the conversation couldn't do their usual equivocating lip service. The ones who tried to explicitly not take a side were judged by both sides for being wishy-washy. And it seems like that polarizing issue may have changed how brands think about brand accountability. In June 2021, over 70 corporations in an open letter urged the US Senate to pass the For the People Voting Rights Act. For those that don't know, the For the People Act was a bill introduced by Democrats in March 2021. The bill was designed to expand voting rights, limit partisan gerrymandering, and change campaign finance laws to reduce the influence of money in elections. On June 22, 2021, the bill was blocked by Republicans in the Senate. But the open letter was still an unprecedented move to see corporations en masse taking a stand on a social justice bill. It came on the heels of Major League Baseball moving the location of their All-Star game, moving it out of Georgia in response to Georgia's new restrictive voting law. Bo's criticism when he filmed this scene was correct. The pressure put on corporations rarely has concrete results. But just maybe that is starting to change, and these brands are going to start taking more real action. Mental illness in comedians is not anything new. Many started out by using humor as a defense or coping mechanism. Robin Williams once said, "I think the saddest people always try their hardest to make people happy, because they know what it's like to feel absolutely worthless, and they don't want anyone else to feel like that." A lot of comedians actually work their mental health into their shows. Mental illness is a regular feature in Maria Bamford's stand-up. John Mulaney has been open on stage about his struggles with addiction and drug abuse. But Burnham's inside feels different. There's a sort of raw, emotional portrayal of mental illness here. While many comedians use jokes or anecdotes to talk about depression, Burnham shows what having depression is like. Declining mental health and suicide is something Bo Burnham has touched on before. Whenever he does jokes about suicide, he normally takes the time to explicitly say he is joking and that you should seek counseling and not kill yourself, which is really good advice, do that. His manner of joking about suicide rightfully makes some people uncomfortable. To me, it is a familiar manner of joking. I grew up around people with a morbid sense of humor, but more importantly, I recognize these jokes as a coping mechanism. I've made these jokes a lot as a way to mask or make light of the real struggle I was facing. Because Inside was more or less filmed in order, you can see both this optimistic outtake that you shouldn't kill yourself, and you can see his low points. I think this is really important. Remember when this was filmed. We all went through trauma of varying degrees last year, and many of us hit these all-time lows that Bo is touching on. Here you can see him playing that optimistic video over what is clearly himself later on in the filming process. It seems to highlight the fact that issues around suicide prevention are not often talked about. Most people try to tune these conversations out by, for example, distracting yourself with your phone. His face appears to show indifference, but his body language suggests the anxiety a lot of people feel when the subject of suicide is brought up. Introspection is a key part of Bo Burnham's shows. The song All Eyes on Me immediately reminded me of his finale from Make Happy. Not just because it's clearly focused on him being the center of attention. I'm talking about the very end of the finale of Make Happy, when Bo talks about how he needs his audience, how he needs the attention even if he doesn't want to.
I want to give you the night out that you deserve, but I want to say what I think and not care what you think about it. A part of me loves you, part of me hates you, part of me needs you, part of me fears you. And I don't think that I can handle this right now.
In Inside, Bo talks about the panic attacks he had on stage, causing his decision to stop performing live. It's these sorts of admissions that really paint a picture of what drives Bo as an artist. Burnham may say that everything he does is scripted and disingenuous.
I'm not honest for a second up here.
But I don't fully believe that. The end of Inside is honest. A lot of his work is honest, sometimes brutally so. And I really hope I'm right about his level of honesty, because the truth is, if I found out it was a completely calculated lie, I would be devastated. Because when I connect to something on so many levels, it becomes really important to me. And when it's something I connect to on that deep a level, something that reaches the vulnerable core of me, it becomes even more precious. This special is honest in a way that's vulnerable. So while it's scripted, it feels like it came from a very real place. Facing and accepting our vulnerabilities is hard and goes against most people's initial instincts. Showing those vulnerabilities to the world like Bo does is downright courageous. So why did Inside affect us so much? There's a scene I love from the show Little Fires Everywhere.
We all have parts that scare us. Parts that we're afraid to look at. Parts that we run from because we are just too scared to look at them. But we can't not look. And we can't not say it.
This, I think, is the true genius of Bo Burnham. He's very insightful and shows our world as it truly is. He can get you to not only connect to him and his music, but he also has a way of holding up a mirror. Sometimes the images we see in that mirror are funny. They're poking fun at the world and all of its chaos. And other times, he shows us the parts of us that we're afraid to look at, the parts of us that are hurting.
You say the ocean's rising like I give a shit. You say the whole world's ending, honey, it already did.
I think the timing of the special's release was perfect. We're coming out of a horrific and traumatizing year and a half. And despite Bo Burnham's mocking of the concept, I think you can help heal with comedy. I think comedy is exactly what we need right now. But comedy for comedy's sake will not completely heal us. Facing the facts of our trauma is just as important in the healing process. Inside makes you look at the whole picture, the good and the bad, the funny and the serious, the laughter and the pain. Thanks for watching. Hit those like and subscribe buttons and tell me in the comment what your favorite song from Inside was. We're not easily distracted at all. Y'all like the Tiny Pumpkins?